Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Renee Mehrra. Thank you so much for joining Zoom In with Renee. Today, I'll be talking to my guests on a very gripping narrative. It's a book, Journey Through Captivity, which is a true life events diary of Dr. Mahendra Sheth, who's right here with me. And it goes back to 1983 in the famine in Ethiopia at that time. And he, with 10 more of his colleagues, was held hostage by rebels in the Tigray terrain. And this diary is a recount of that. The author is right here with me as well, and she is Mrs.Sheela Sheth. So it's husband-wife team over here. Thank you so much for joining me today. Dr. Mahendra Sheth, he's had 45 years of experience in healthcare. He's a pediatrician, worked in many UN agencies, as well as with WHO and Save the Children Fund. That was the agency when he was held hostage in 1983 in Ethiopia. And Mrs. Sheela Sheth is an author, and she's a freelance writer. A gripping narrative. But what's the great part of it is all's well that ends well. So let me go first to Mrs. Sheela Sheth. Tell me, what inspired you to write your husband's diary?
Thank you for having us on your show. The main inspiration actually came from the fact that we had to share with the world a slice of life, which remained dormant for over 40 years with us. The main inspiration, of course, also came from my husband, who was ready to share his diary, and then I had to bring it to life. The main idea or the main reason for me to write the book was because I had spent my formative years in Ethiopia, and I felt that I owed gratitude to those small town people where we started our lives. And of course, at the same time, this was my dream over the years, and I'm so glad that it was accomplished. And it took almost 3 long years.
Wow.
It was during COVID, actually, that I would like to add this, especially because day in and day out, we were losing a lot of our dear ones due to the wrath of COVID. And so I did have, and since we stayed indoors a lot, it gave me a lot of time to concentrate, read, and collect my personal and concentrate on my personal writings. So that was the main, and then of course the inspiration also came from the family whose support I had actually over the years. And I would say a special inspiration was my daughter, who is a graphic designer. And she is responsible for the beautiful, colorful, and very metaphorical cover of the book, which is available on Amazon.
This is a book. It also is a tribute to refugees and those who are displaced. So it is actually talks about the universal human spirit. It's about challenges and the trials and tribulations that Dr. Sheth and his colleagues went through, but it's also a story of hope and courage and resilience against odds. Do you think it had a cathartic effect on both of you when you wrote this book out? You are sharing those heart-wrenching feelings and emotions that you went through at that time in 1983.
Yes. So when Mahendra was away on field trips, I would say that it was a constant struggle for me because I was always left behind with 2 little kids. My daughter was just born then, and our son was just like about 2.5 years old when he started his journey, all this journey on field trips. And every time he went, and I would say that every time he went, I felt as if I was on a sword's edge, waiting desperately for his return every time from his field trips. I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional.
I understand. But I think it must have had a lot of healing effect on you with the book and the support system of your family. Dr. Sheth, it was your son's birthday. It was April 22nd, 1983, when you were taken hostage in Ethiopia. Share that moment when life seemed to be hanging from a very thin thread at that point of time. You're a pediatrician, you're protecting the underprivileged children, and here the rebels have come and 11 of you are taken hostage.
Let me start by dividing this into three parts. Before the kidnapping, I was working with so many what you call children, providing healthcare, and then we had a whole team. We had about 12,000 children being fed 3 times a day. It was a big feeding machine. Lots of malnourished children, lots of malnourished people, lots of children who were dying because of diseases. We had outbreaks of cholera, we had outbreaks of, relapsing fever. So you can imagine the situation. And the working hours were on, like there was no stoppage. It was 24/7. So on the day actually of the incident, in fact, I should have been aware of that because I speak the language. So there was this whisper going on, but as you know, it's a communist country, so people will not come out overtly and tell you, be careful, there's something going to happen. But on the night before, somebody said, go quickly to your hotels because there's going to be a wedding tomorrow. That was the word they used as a euphemism for something terrible is going to happen. So on the morning of the attack, in fact, actually, I was supposed to be, attending my son's birthday party, so I promised to go down. But what happened is one of our nutritionists got pneumonia. So I exchanged I traded my going down, my leave with her, and I said, "You go down and get, better, and I'll stay back." So I stayed back, and then on the morning of that attack, its attack started at dawn at 6 a.m. And initially, we thought, well, this was a border town with lots of rebels, going in and out. There shouldn't be a problem. But then this became more and more serious. And within an hour, the Ethiopian army came and said, all of you, please leave this. Come with us. We're going to take you to a safe place. And so they took us to the army camp across the road. The battle lasted for about 12 hours, so from 6 in the morning until 6 in the evening. And then in the later part of the evening, it became more and more intense. So we said, oh, now this is getting more serious. And sure it did, because the windows opened and we expected the Ethiopian army to sort of say, hello, okay, everything is okay. Instead of that, we heard the rebels. And so we were all very shocked. So here we were in an army camp with rebels pointing their guns. And one of them could have easily shot us, thinking that we were from the army or something. So we are thankful that we are alive. So we came out, and then where we were taken to a safe place. And on the roads, we saw so many people killed, so many soldiers killed. So it was a very, very, sort of disturbing sight. And then we were, kept for nearly about 12 hours. For 3-4 hours. And then in the middle of the night, we were then asked to, and then in the middle of the night, we were sort of asked to start leaving to drive for Koram. So that's where we were sort of driven in the middle of the night, and that road was mined. And it was, sort of thanks to some of the farmers who told us, do not drive on this side of the road, otherwise you'll get blown up. So next morning, we reached a place called Sakota, but we were really dead tired after 12 hours of fighting.
Share some of those pictures.
So here I was in Koram treating children. That was my work all the time, making sure that, the kids get vaccinated, to get their treatment and so on and so forth. These are the kind of scenes we used to see regularly, malnourished children. As you can see, this child has got marasmus and all that. And then here we are at one of those places in a lonely place in Tigray, listening. The only communication we had was radio. And we were listening to the news in Addis Ababa, wishing we were there with our families, but we were completely alone. And this is just to show you the topography of Tigray. It was dry, it was arid, And you can see there are not many trees inside, and it was hot and humid. And here are some of the captives with me. Here we are enjoying a morning coffee, but there was no news about when we were going to be released. The one on the left is the tukul where we had to, sort of spend the time and live in that. And this is like the communal meal we shared with
What kind of
everybody.
meal were they giving you that time? It's just bread.
What you can
I
see
see some
here is
bread.
local bread injera, and there'll be some curry or something like that, and some meat as well. So this is my photo in captivity, looking at my birthday card, which my colleagues had prepared for me, and
This is your 31st birthday over there.
my 31st birthday. And this is the tukul where we lived in. So it was one of the places we moved very to various places because they wanted to avoid any raid from the Ethiopian army. But this is an example of the type of accommodation we had for nearly 49 days.
It was 49 days in captivity. I want to go back to Mrs.Sheela Sheth when you first got the phone call that your husband has been held hostage. That must have been a very, very, very rough and heart-wrenching moment for you. Your son was 6 years of age, and the other child was, I think, what, 9 months old?
That's right. Few months, 9 months, yes.
So
this was the
time for a mother and a wife.
I would remain in Addis most of the time at the SCF, the Save the Children Fund house, whenever Mahendra went on his field trips, as I said earlier. This was the time it was, we were waiting as you know, that it was Prameet's 6th birthday and Mahendra was supposed to come. But we waited for him to cut the birthday cake because his little friends were there around us and we were getting late. So we said 9 o'clock, and then 9 o'clock we finished, but then the children parted. Of course, they all left. And Mahendra did not show up. But instead of that, at 11 o'clock in the night, I got this phone call, which was like an echoing in the empty house because it was a huge house with just the 3 of us in the house. So there was an echo in the office. So I just ran to the phone. And the first thing I hear is from one of the colleagues of Mahendra who had come down, as he said earlier. He said, Koram they had a battle, and Koram is being taken away, or they lost the battle, so they're taken away by the rebels. And Mahendra and the team have been captured by the guerrillas and taken as hostage. Now, at that point, the word guerrilla, I could not actually fathom that, and I had absolutely no knowledge of what it meant. But just an hour later, the BBC reporter from Nairobi called me, and he said, and Tony had alerted me not to disclose this to anyone. Even
Tony was from Save the Children Fund?
He was from a nutritionist, Mahendra's colleague from Save the Children Fund, who called me up. And he said not to disclose if anyone called you. So I knew the intensity of the situation. And I just sat there on the chair. I didn't know what to do I was dumbstruck, basically. But of course, as the motherly instinct that I had, because both my children were sleeping in the other room, I didn't want to wake them up. So I just sat there for a while, and then the second phone call rings up, and it's a BBC reporter, Mike Waldridge from Nairobi, calling. So I said, hello. He said, who's speaking? And I said, I'm Sheela here. She said, do you know what's going on in Kora? And I said, absolutely not. I have no knowledge. And then that was the time. And then I put the phone down because I didn't want to say anything more. I was quite disturbed, and I knew there was something really serious that was going on at that point. And of course, then the whole story came out the very next morning. The whole entire team from Save the Children Fund, including the director of Save the Children Fund, he came down actually to the SCF house. And Mahendra is the only person with a family with the Save the Children team. So we were under the umbrella of them, and we had very great support from them.
And then you moved to your uncle's home for the time being.
And after that, we were taken because the media was getting really overwhelming for me. So then I moved, and they said it's better that you move to a family home rather than stay here.
Well, were you able to be in touch with your husband at that time?
No, not at all. We had no news for many, many days until it was much, much later, even after a month, I would say. Absolutely no idea what was going on there, except we just had some news only in the newspapers much later when the media team went in.
Dr. Sheth, so the media team was only allowed much later on in the 49 days of your captivity?
That's right.
And so you distracted yourself with a diary and you became the official doctor of all the colleagues who were held captive with you. Finally, after 49 days, we hear the good tidings. You're free at last. And then you were taken to Buckingham Palace because Princess Anne, she was the president of Save the Children Fund at that time. Right now, she's the patron.
Yeah.
So share those beautiful moments from captivity to freedom and then Buckingham Palace for high tea with Princess Anne.
That was an amazing moment, to be honest. I was... First of all, when I was released, we hadn't seen electricity all throughout the 49 days. We hadn't seen clean water. We hadn't seen, taps. We were fetching water from, sources which are not very, very clean. So the first thing when I was released was to experience that as a freedom in terms of my freedom and say, oh, there's electricity. I had forgotten that if you press the switch, the light comes on. So that was the small things which we take for granted that really came out, and it was very nice. Then we were flown we were released in Sudan, in Khartoum. And from there, we were flown to London. And then we were then suddenly told that, you're invited for tea at Buckingham Palace. And, normally we used to go to visit UK and we would watch everything from outside, the changing of the guards and, the Buckingham Palace from outside. So this was a very new experience when we drove up to the palace gates and then the guards, saluted and, opened the gates. We were taken inside and then we were led to, I think we had to climb about a couple of stairs before we went into meet Princess Anne. And coming down, there was a gentleman who smiled at us and said, "Hi, how are you?" And I didn't even know who it was. And we replied, "Thank you, we are fine." And he went down the stairs. And then I was later told that was Prince Andrew. So it was a very interesting meeting, a short but brief one. And then we were led into the place where office of Princess Anne. After a few formalities, we were, in a private. Previously they had a photographer to take the pictures of us meeting her and all that. So this is the time when I was released at Heathrow Airport with my, children and Sheila on the side. And this is the press conference we had at the airport. And then this is where we met Princess Anne at her place with two of the people who were held hostage with me as well. And this is the director of Overseas Department, the late Hugh McKine. So it was a unique experience. And what really amazed me was that we had 3 hours of conversation where she was listening and asking questions of how we went through everything. I thought it was a very, very nice, high tea with Princess Anne, and I'm really grateful for that.
Right. And then you got a scholarship from Princess Anne.
I got the scholarship for the pediatric course.
Pediatric course, a tropical pediatrics.
Yes, that's right, in Liverpool. So I was in
London
Liverpool.
School of Hygiene, you got a scholarship.
That I got it from UNICEF.
UNICEF, okay.
That was much later. It was in 2000, 2013 or 2012, when I went. But this one was in 1984 that I went to learn Liverpool School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine.
Very touching story and the recount of what you went through. Every day looked like, will there be another tomorrow? This really brings your resilience, and the universal human spirit is right here in this book. The
Thank you.
interesting part is that you were 11 of you that were held hostage. 10 of your colleagues, they went back to their own country, but you went back to Ethiopia. And that's very, very interesting because it had such horrible memories of you being in captivity. Yet you chose to continue and Save the Children Fund and go back to Ethiopia. What made you do that?
Well, the famine was still raging. It wasn't over. And I was committed to sort of going back and working in that same environment. So,
But weren't you like scared for yourself and your family's future?
not really, actually. In fact, I was sort of looking forward to going back to Ethiopia and, sort of picking up from where I left.
Were
And
you not
I'm
worried that you
thankful.
might be kidnapped again?
No, I think those chances are one in a million. So it would have been probably rare for me to get kidnapped. And if they did kidnap me, they might have sort of said, "We've already had you, so we'll release you immediately," I'm sure. But the interesting fact is that, yes, I decided that I'm not going to be, leaving without completing my work. So I went back with my family and went back to Koram, the place where I was kidnapped.
Wow.
And I sort of restarted my work there. By that time, of course, we had additional help. So we had a team of doctors and nurses who were working over there. So there was another challenge that came up, and that was the eastern border of Ethiopia, which is known as the Somali region. At that time, there was a big sort of war in the eastern region, and the whole town of Hargeisa was destroyed by the rebels. So we had 1.5 million refugees who came to the eastern border in two small towns called Harshin and Hatishek. So because Koram was the place where I was kidnapped from was well taken care of, I went to start an operation in Harshin and Hatishek where I worked for another 2 years.
Wow.
And then I continued that work until 1989 when I left Ethiopia.
And Mrs. Sheth, so you had no choice but to follow your husband where he wanted to go, and he was committed
Absolutely.
to helping the children. That's amazing. Now you're retired and you live in Canada.
After Save the Children, I was then went to Malawi and then to Sudan again, where I was released, and then to Oman, and then back to Ethiopia in 2000,
Wow.
where I was posted by UNICEF for from 2000 to 2003, and then later on at the regional office in Amman, Jordan. Interesting thing was when I went back in 2000, the rebels who had kidnapped me were now in power. So it was
Oh,
interesting to see them and saying, "Oh, you, okay, how are you?"
oh my God.
So I met them in a different form of life where they were senior officials of the and running the government.
Hmm.
So it was interesting to see the whole, change in tides. But after 2013, I retired. I've been lucky and I've been working as a consultant.
Okay.
So I worked in Thailand as a regional advisor ad interim for supporting the 20 countries in the Southeast Asia region. And then I went there back to Thailand for training on health in emergencies, how to manage health in emergencies. I did similar courses in Myanmar, Comoros, and other countries. So I've been sort of busy for the time. The last one I did was my consultancy with World Health Organization in 2021 when COVID struck.
I see.
So I was supporting three countries, Sudan, Yemen, and Pakistan, in maintaining services for maternal and child health in the during the in the COVID situation.
Do you plan to write another diary about all your other events? There's so much of interesting stuff that you have that you can talk about and relate. Want to put out some more diaries of yours out, and Mrs. Sheth will then pen them down in a book.
I leave it to her to decide. I think there are many interesting episodes, but this one was something that was close to our heart, impacted our lives.
Do you give talks to refugees or those who have been displaced to give them hope and courage?
I used to. I mean, whenever I go to these consultancies, this is what I also speak with them, and because I actually lived with them. That was the thing. So I know the day-to-day life of a person who is displaced is challenging. Here it is a person who has, it's like sort of you are in the house in your own environment, and then something happens and you are completely displaced out of your house. Your environment is gone. Your traditional food is gone. Your traditional habits are not going to be there, and your amenities are completely gone. So picture ourselves doing that. Yes, I have sort of tried to talk to many of the refugees whenever I get a chance to do that.
What kept you going in those 49 grueling days that you remained positive?
I think part of it was the fact that there was always a hope that we will be released. And then my colleagues who were there were some who had very positive attitudes. So we used to sort of share this with the others who were down in the dumps. We would go and sort of like one of them used to make a joke saying, "Oh my God, I just went out for a curry and then look where I am." I told my wife, "I'm just going out for 15 minutes for a curry and here I am." So that kind of, sort of jokes we used to tell each other. We used to support each other. I think that is what kept us going.
Yeah.
Many times there would be people who would say, "I don't see any future. I don't even know if we're going to come out alive." And we said, "It hasn't happened, so let it be. We'll see when, we'll cross the bridge when it comes."
Wow. Mrs. Sheth, any future projects for you?
Uh, yes, I've been already working on Journey Through the Spice World. It's a combination of my travels and my culinary memories over the years. And there's also reflections of life in form of short stories, because I have interacted with, again, some of the refugees and some of the displaced, the street boys, the beggars in India, and a lot of human interest stories, basically, which I usually used to write for newspapers and magazines in India and overseas. And my culinary memories, and I'm a member of the writers team for Family Flavors right now for over 13 years. And the magazine is published from Amman, Jordan, where we lived for 10 years, and I continue working with them. And a couple of my articles, it's a monthly magazine which is published in English and Arabic and translated in Arabic for Gulf region and the Middle East. So I really enjoy doing my writings, and I hope to continue writing as much as I can.
Wish you all the very best, Mrs. Sheth, with your writings, and Dr. Mahendra Sheth for sharing this story of hope and resilience and bringing so much of positivity in so many people's lives.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Renee, for having both of us on your show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'm Dr. Renee Mehrra. Stay healthy, stay positive.